Property trusts are not unique in Australia. In fact, property trusts have been around for decades. Most investors would be aware of the concept of investing in a property trust that buys retail or commercial office assets, but it struck us as strange that within Australia there were no residential property trusts that catered for a market that's 3 times bigger than the ASX. The residential property market has been the best performing over the last 30 years with the lowest volatility. We thought we really need to spend some time focusing on this because Australians deserve to have access to that market. We looked all around the world for the best models. We observed that in America, more than 25% of capital that's invested through managed funds ends up in residential property. In the UK, it's a growing market. In some of the other countries around the world, it's the largest asset class for major investment houses. So we thought we need to be able to provide this for Australians, and we need to come up with a model that works for Australians. We looked at the most successful investors in Australia, and Harry Triguboff is the most successful residential property investor in Australia. When he was 35, he built 8 townhouses, he sold 4 and he kept 4. Now he owns thousands of properties generating rent for him every week and is virtually bulletproof. He has so much positive cash flow that he can now build and add value to his properties without ever needing to go to the bank for approval or to pre-sell any of it. When we looked beyond that, in America, a man by the name of Donald Bren has followed almost exactly the same path as Harry Triguboff. He owns thousands and thousands of properties, paying rent every week, and no matter what happens in the market, despite the GFC 10 years ago, most of those tenants keep paying rent. Again, he became bulletproof for most financial shocks. A little bit closer to home, we realised that it's almost the same model that our father introduced us to more than 30 years ago. Our dad built 6 townhouses, he sold 4 and he kept 2 without having a very big mortgage at the end. He was then generating positive cash flow and allowed him to do his next property and add value to it, generating positive rent at the end. We realised that that was a model that obviously had some merit. We'd actually done it ourselves for many years, and it had helped us to grow our wealth as well. So we thought, how do we help to bring this to Australians in a way that works for them? And we obviously don't want to have a fund that's got a large exposure or high risk that perhaps Harry Triguboff started with at the start of his career. So we thought, well, if we have low gearing and we're buying assets that are either income generating from day one or which we can add value to and hold for many years, generating income for our investors, then as that portfolio grows, the portfolio becomes more and more bulletproof, like Harry Triguboff and like Donald Bren. The more properties that we have generating rent from more different sources and more different types of tenants, the more robust it is and the lower risk it is for investors. And that means that we can become more reliant on the income for our investors in the future, and it allows us to continue to add property. So even in a downturn, we're able to go and buy assets while others are selling, and may not be a lot of people buying in that market. We're able to buy below market price or at a discount, get a great rental income and hold that for years. So it allows us to really take advantage of market cycles rather than being the victim of market cycles as many property investors are. It's taken us 3 years to get to this point. We've been all around the world looking at all these models, and we've been making sure that we're providing the best property investment platform that we can for investors, and we think that we've nailed it with ResiFund.